Vandehang Sri Guru Sri Yuta Padakamalang Sri Gurun Vaishnavangscha Sri Rupang Sagrajatang Sahagana Raghunathan Vitang Tang Sajivam Sadvaitang Savadhutang Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakanvitangscha Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasa Adigaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Hari Haraye Namaha Krishna Yadavaya Namaha Gopala Govinda Rama Shri Madhusudana Hari Haraye Namaha Jigyasitang susampanam apite mahad adbhutam kritavan bharatang yastvang sarvartha paribringhitam. Sri Narada said, O Vyasadeva, your inquiries were full, and your studies were also well fulfilled. And there is no doubt that you have prepared a great and wonderful work known as the Maha-Bharata, which is full of all kinds of Vedic sequences, elaborately explained. Achintya kalu ye bhava natang starkena yojayet prakritibhya parang yachcha tad achintyasya lakshanam. Anything transcendental to material nature is known as inconceivable, whereas arguments are all mundane. And since mundane arguments cannot touch transcendental subject matters, one should not try to understand such things through mundane arguments. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Maha-Bharata, Part 1, Chapter 3. The Pandavas come to Hastinapur. In Hastinapur, Dhritarashtra had performed 5 sacrifices with the wealth Pandu had bestowed upon him. Dhritarashtra gave charity to hundreds of thousands of brahmanas and satisfied the gods with his offerings. The kingdom flourished and the citizens had everything they desired. They were devoted to virtue, sacrifice, and truth. Bearing love and affection for one another, they grew in prosperity. Hastinapur was like the ocean, filled with numerous palaces and mansions. There were golden arches and crystal fountains everywhere. Between broad, paved highways lay beautiful gardens, and the air was filled with the sweet fragrance of blossoming trees. The clatter of the horses' hooves and chariot wheels, mixed with the trumpeting of elephants and the blare of conch shells, which marked the beginning of sacrificial performances. Holy chants uttered by numerous brahmanas emanated from tall and exquisitely carved temple buildings which graced the city in the thousands. Indeed, Hastinapur appeared like Indra's celestial capital, and each day dozens of feudal kings would arrive bringing tribute. Assisted by Bhishma, Dhritarashtra ruled over the kingdom on behalf of his younger brother Pandu. After hearing of Pandu being cursed and his subsequent retirement, Dhritarashtra, despite his blindness, was officially installed as monarch. Sadly, Dhritarashtra thought of his brother, missing him greatly. But in Pandu's absence, Dhritarashtra competently managed all the affairs of state. And so it once came to pass that Vyasadeva arrived hungry and thirsty at the palace of Dhritarashtra. Gandhari attended to Vyas conscientiously. Vyasadeva was pleased with Gandhari and blessed her. "Oh, you shall soon have 100 sons as powerful as your husband." And so, in due course of time, Gandhari conceived. For 2 years she bore the embryo within her womb, becoming increasingly anxious. Then, one day news reached Gandhari that Kunti had given birth in the forest to a boy who was as effulgent as the morning sun. Out of frustration and anger at her own excessively long gestation, Gandhari struck violently at her womb. Gandhari then brought forth a hard mass of flesh which resembled an iron ball. As Gandhari's nurses informed her of the stillbirth, she was afflicted by grief and thought of Vyasadeva and his boon. At once the sage Vyasadeva appeared before her. "What have you done?" Gandhari then told Vyas how she had become overwhelmed with envy and frustration when she heard of Kunti giving birth to Yudhishthir. With tears in her eyes, Gandhari explained, "I struck my womb, and so this lump of flesh came out. What then was the meaning of your boon?" "O Queen Gandhari, you should know that my words can never prove false. Now, order the servants to bring me 101 pots, all filled with ghee. I will sprinkle cool water on that lump of flesh, and it will gradually be divided into 101 parts, each the size of a thumb." The pots then were sealed and placed in a private concealed spot. Vyasadeva instructed that the pots should be opened only after 2 more years had passed. Vyasadeva then departed for his lonely mountain ashram. And exactly after the 2 years had elapsed, the pots were opened one by one. From the first pot came a child who was named Duryodhana. At the very moment he was brought out of the pot, the sound of braying asses and screaming vultures was heard. Jackals howled and the wind blew fiercely. Without any apparent cause, fires sprang up all around the city, raging in all directions. The frightened Dhritarashtra then summoned the Brahmanas, Bhishma, Vidura, and other ministers and counselors. Dhritarashtra asked them the meaning of these omens. Dhritarashtra said, "The eldest of the princes is undoubtedly Yudhishthir, and he should inherit the kingdom. That I do not dispute. But will my own son ever become the king after him? Tell me, O wise ones, what is right and lawful?" And as Dhritarashtra was speaking, the terrible sounds began again from all sides. Hearing this, Vidura replied to his elder brother, "My dear king, when these omens are seen at the birth of a child, it is evident that one will be the exterminator of one's own race. Our prosperity and future depend upon this child being abandoned. Now, do not hesitate, O king. This child must be cast away at once." Vidura consoled Dhritarashtra that still he would have 99 other sons, and there would be no sin in abandoning this child, Duryodhana, as the scriptures clearly state that an individual can be abandoned for the sake of a family. Indeed, a family can be abandoned for the sake of a village, and a village for the sake of a city, and the whole world itself can be abandoned for the sake of the spirit soul. Dhritarashtra was unable to accept Vidura's counsel. Dhritarashtra could not allow his firstborn son, Duryodhana, to be cast away. Dhritarashtra simply shook his head slowly and said nothing in reply. As the nurse stood by, holding the baby, the king waved her toward Gandhari, and the child was handed to her. Bhishma and Vidura looked at one another, but said nothing. After all, Dhritarashtra was monarch. His word was final. And over the course of the next month, all the pots were opened, and 100 boys and 1 girl were all brought forth. All the boys bore the signs of being great warriors and rulers. The king and queen rejoiced in their good fortune, dismissing the evil omens. They dwelt contentedly in Hastinapur, attended by Bhishma and Vidura. Jai Govinda, Jaya Gopal, Keshava, Madhava, Dina Dayal. Dina Dayal, Prabhu, Dina Dayal, Dina Doyal, Dina Doyal. Shyama Sundara, Kanayalal, Girivaradhari, Nanda Dulal. Nanda Dulal, Prabhu Nanda Dulal, Nanda Dulal, Prabhu Nanda Dulal. Achyuta Keshava, Sri Radha Madhava, Govinda Gopala Hari. Achyuta Keshava, Sri Radha Vallabha, Govinda Gopala Hari. Hari Haraye Namaha. So it mentioned one daughter, and when I prepared this class, I forgot to mention. So the daughter's name was Dushala. So that was the one daughter. Let's continue. We've got more to go over. Nice to see you all. May Krishna bless you and protect you. Meanwhile, on Saptasrota mountain, spring had arrived. Pandu, surrounded by his 5 youthful sons, felt young once again. Pandu sported with the boys in the hills, scaling rock faces and challenging lions in their caves. They dived and played in mountain pools and climbed tall trees. Wrestling and laughing together, they rolled about the soft grassy slopes. One evening, Pandu went into the woods with Madri to fetch roots and fruits for their evening meal. As they strolled about, they saw countless varieties of blossoming trees and bushes. The air was heavy with the scent and sound of cuckoos and other birds who filled the air. Black bees swarmed about the many colored flowers which surrounded lakes overgrown with lotus flowers. The celestial atmosphere awoke romance in Pandu's heart. He gazed at the beautiful Madri, his mind now under the influence of Cupid. It was a hot day, and Madri was clad in a long silken robe. In the bright sunshine, Pandu could see the outline of her exquisite form, which resembled that of a goddess. The soft breeze made her dress cling to her body, revealing her slender waist and firm, round breasts. But Pandu could not suppress his desire. Pandu had kept himself in check for 12 years and not even dared contemplate embracing his wives. And of course, Kinda's curse was always uppermost in his mind, and Pandu had resigned himself to practicing celibacy with the determination of a rishi. Why, it seemed ages ago when Pandu had been able to enjoy conjugal love with his wives. But now, Pandu once again felt those stirrings moving within his heart. Pandu's mind was confounded, and he moved closer to Madri, gently placing his hand on her arm. At once, Madri could understand what was in Pandu's heart, but she was seized with conflicting emotions. How was it that her lord suddenly was approaching her in this way? Out of fear of the curse, Pandu had carefully avoided any physical contact with either Madri or Kunti for a long time. Although she herself had longed for Pandu's embrace, Madri had scrupulously avoided any situation which might entice Pandu. Why, she did not even apply cosmetics or perfumes. But as the powerful Pandu embraced her, Madri felt her resolve weaken. Simultaneously, both delight and fear seized her heart at once. As her emotions clashed, Madri's mind was petrified. What about the curse? If Pandu does not stop, doubtlessly he will be destroyed. I have to prevent him. Madri tried to push her husband away, but Pandu only smiled, being incited further by her protests. His mighty arms, deeply tanned and marked with scars from his bowstring, closed around her like serpents. Overpowered by desire, Pandu could not even hear Madri when she said, "Oh, Have you forgotten the curse of Kindama? But Pandu kept on forcing himself upon her, while Madri's resistance only inflamed Pandu's passion even more. As if impelled by the Lord of Death himself, the monarch entirely lost his reasoning under the influence of lust. No thought of Kindama's curse even entered Pandu's mind as he lost himself in enjoyment with his fair-skinned wife. Even as he tried to consummate the act with Madri, the Rishi's words took effect. Suddenly, Pandu's chest was seized with a terrible pain, and a shocked look crossed his face. Pandu's body stiffened and went slack. As Pandu's body fell from hers, Madri let out a wail of sorrow. Oh! Her worst fears had now been realized, for despite all of her protests, Madri had not been able to prevent Pandu's death. The distraught queen repeatedly embraced her dead husband, lamenting loudly. Then Kunti heard Madri's cries and ran over to where she was laying. As Kunti approached, the tearful Madri told her to come alone without the children. Kunti quickly sent the boys back to the ashram, then rushed to Pandu's side. She dropped to the ground, realizing at once what had happened, and she cried out, "Oh, my Lord, my Lord, my Lord!" Tears welled up into her eyes as Kunti now turned to Madri. "Oh, noble one, how have you allowed this to happen? I was always so careful to protect our Lord from this very danger. How did he embrace you, knowing of the Rishi's curse? And why did you tempt him when you were alone together? Why, he was always grave in our company as he thought of Kindama's words. How did he become so careless?" Madri wept, unable to reply. Kunti tossed about on the ground next to her. The two beautiful ladies embraced their husband's dead body, shedding profuse tears. Kunti again addressed Madri. "O Princess of Madra, surely you are more fortunate than I, for you saw our Lord's face light up with joy as he approached you in this lonely place." Gathering her senses, Madri replied, "Oh, my dear sister, with tears in my eyes I tried to resist him. Yet he could not control himself. Why, he seemed bent on fulfilling the Rishi's curse." Kunti prayed for strength. Somehow or other, this was the arrangement of God. Indeed, the ways of providence were always mysterious. But what should be done now? What was her duty? Kunti gently stroked the head of her younger co-wife and spoke. "Oh, Madri, there is only one recourse for me. Please allow me to ascend to heaven with our Lord. Rise up and raise our children. Give me the body, and tightly embracing it, I shall enter the fire." But Madri just shook her head and pleaded with Kunti. "The monarch died as he approached me, but his desire was not satiated. So, should it not be I who goes to the region of the dead to gratify him? Why, I am still clasping him even now, and I will not allow him to go without me. "Oh, Kunti, please let me go." Madri felt incapable of bringing up the children by herself. Kunti would be a far better mother. Madri had seen Kunti's gentle dealings with the boys. Surely Kunti would treat them all equally. Madri begged Kunti's permission to enter the fire with Pandu. "Oh, Kunti, the king sought me with desire, so grant me leave to fulfill that desire. You would be doing me the greatest good, and I shall leave my sons in your care without any fear." Kunti looked compassionately upon Madri as she lay with her arms around Pandu, bathing him with her tears. The noble Kunti felt her heart torn. Although as the elder wife, it was her privilege to choose to follow the king to the next world, how could she deny Madri? After all, it was to her that Pandu had been attracted. If Madri were to live, she would live with the memory of that brief and terrible moment the rest of her life. Certainly guilt would consume her, along with the anguish of being unable to fulfill her husband's last desire. Although Kunti longed to follow Pandu herself, Kunti could not be so cruel to her co-wife. Kunti touched Madri gently and said, "Tatastu, so be it." Kunti then went with a heavy heart toward the ashram. When the boys heard of their father's death, they were struck with grief. They ran, crying, to where Pandu lay and fell to the ground like powerful lions rolling on the earth. Madri blessed them tearfully, telling them that she would be ascending the funeral pyre with Pandu. Madri asked her two sons, Nakula and Sahadev, to remain with Kunti and serve her steadfastly. The boys were too shocked to reply. They watched as the rishis built a funeral pyre next to the king's body. Then, while reciting mantras, they placed Pandu's body upon the pyre. The rishis then asked Yudhishthir to step forward. The prince, blinded by tears, set fire to the pyre and then stood back. And as the flames rose, Madri folded her palms and fell upon Pandu's burning body. Holding on tight as the fire consumed them both. Within minutes, both she and Pandu were gone. The grief-stricken Kunti then asked the rishis what she should do. The rishis advised Kunti to now return to Hastinapur with her boys as soon as possible. The rishis also told Kunti they would accompany her, carrying the remnants of Pandu and Madri with them. The large number of rishis, siddhas, and charanas formed a procession, walking ahead of Kunti and her 5 sons. By their mystical powers, they all arrived at Hastinapur within a short time. Kunti then presented herself at the northern gate, and messengers ran swiftly to inform King Dhritarashtra. Upon hearing of her arrival, Dhritarashtra, Bhishma, Satyavati, and all the other Kuru elders hurried to the gate, followed by a large number of citizens who had heard that an assembly of celestials had arrived. Everyone was struck with wonder to see the brilliant rishis surrounded by siddhas and charanas. People came out in the thousands just to see those divine beings. Along with his 100 sons, Dhritarashtra bowed before the rishis. Bhishma and the others also offered their obeisances to the sages, and after offering them seats, they sat before them on silk mats spread out on the ground. When the crowd was finally settled, Bhishma went forward and worshipped the rishis by bathing their feet and offering them arghya, water for reception. Bhishma answered their inquiries about the kingdom's welfare, saying that everything was well. Then one of the leaders stood up and addressed the Kuru elders on behalf of all the rishis. The virtuous monarch went to the Saptasrota mountain to observe the vow of celibacy. Somehow or other, by the Supreme Lord's inscrutable plan and the arrangement of the demigods, Pandu's 5 sons were born. The rishi then introduced each of Pandu's sons, revealing the identities of their divine fathers. He told them how the boys had been trained in Vedic knowledge and had grown to youthhood in the company of rishis and siddhas. Glancing around the large concourse of men who had assembled outside the city, the rishi continued speaking. Steadily adhering to virtue and leaving behind him these children, Pandu has ascended to the higher worlds. The chaste Madri has gone with him. Now, Pandu's sons should be accepted as the rightful heirs of the kingdom. The rishi pointed to a casket on a stand lying nearby, covered with a white cloth. Here are the remains of Pandu and his wife Madri. Now, perform the necessary funeral rites and accept these 5 sons as if they were your own. We shall now depart. And when the rishi stopped speaking, he, along with all the other rishis and celestial beings, vanished. In astonishment, the citizens returned to their homes. Bhishma then led Kunti and the boys into the city and arranged for their accommodation in a royal palace. Dhritarashtra ordered the funeral rites to be performed and declared a state of mourning in the city for 12 full days. The Kurus were distracted with grief over the loss of Pandu, for Pandu had been dearly loved by all the citizens, and so they lamented loudly. Pandu's 5 sons, now known as the Pandavas, lay on the bare ground for 12 days, giving full vent to their grief. They did not accept royal comforts or beds, and they wept along with the Kuru elders. At the end of the mourning period, the Kurus performed Pandu's Shraddha. They distributed vast amounts of food and wealth to the Brahmanas on behalf of the departed souls. Then, life returned to normal in Hastinapur, and Pandu's sons took their place in the royal family. And it was at that time that Vyasadeva chose to again appear in the city. Vyas spoke privately to the bereaved and sorrowful Satyavati. "O Mother, fearful and terrible times lie ahead. The dark age of Kali now approaches. Sin increases day by day. Soon, by the evil acts of the Kurus, your race will be destroyed, and a great havoc will be wrought in the world." Vyasadeva advised his mother to immediately retire to the forest rather than stay to witness the pain and horror that would soon follow. Satyavati should devote herself to the practice of yoga and meditation. After Vyasadeva left, Satyavati reflected on his words. She decided to follow his advice. Satyavati then told her two daughters-in-law of her intentions and asked Pandu's distraught mother, Ambalika, to accompany her. The two royal ladies soon left for the forest to dedicate themselves to asceticism. In time, they gave up their bodies and went joyfully to the higher regions. Meanwhile, Ambika remained in Hastinapur with her son Dhritarashtra. Namaste Narasimhaya. Namaste Narasimhaya. Namaste Narasimhaya. Praklada Klada Dayane. Praklada Klada Dayane. Hiranya Kashi Puravakshaha. Hiranya Kashi Puravakshaha. Shilatankana Khalaye. Nrsimha Parato Nrsimha. Ito Nrsimha Parato Nrsimha. Yato Yato Yamitato Nrsimha. Yato Yato Yamitato Nrsimha. Bahi Nrsimha Hridaye Nrsimha. Bahi Nrsimha Hridaye Nrsimha. Nrsimhamading Sharanam Prapadi. Nrsimhamading Sharanam Prapadi. Namaste Narasimhaya. Chavakara Kamala Bhare Nakam Adbhuta Sringam. Dalita Hiranyakashipu Chanubhringam. Keshavadvita Narahari Rupa Jaya Jagadisha Hare. Jaya Jagadisha Hare. Jaya Jagadisha Hare. Chavakara Kamala Bhare Nakam Adbhuta Sringam. Dalita Hiranyakashipu Chanubhringam. Keshavadvita Narahari Rupa Jaya Jagadisha Hare. Jaya Jagadisha Hare. Jaya Jagadisha Hare. Jaya Jagadish, Jaya Jagadish, Jaya Jagadish Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shri Nasringa, Jaya Nasringa, Jaya Jaya Nrasingha, Prakladesha, Jaya Padma, Mukha Padma Bringa.